You are listening to TMBDOS. They must be destroyed on sight. The following podcast may contain language and discussions of a frank and adult nature, and spoilers regarding the films discussed are always to be expected. Thank you for joining us. Now start the show, Dr. Rausch.
They must be destroyed on sight.
All right, welcome back. It is the first episode of 2019 of They Must Be Destroyed on Sight, episode 148.
Only in releasing time, because we're recording this on December 30th, my friend.
Shut up.
Am I letting people behind the curtain of this? Is that what's going on?
The Iron Curtain?
Revealing our trade secrets that we actually do record before we release?
Yeah, we are going to be looking at our best and a little bit of our worst sort of first-time watches for 2018. This is sort of something we do every year on the podcast. We don't do a best of necessarily the year in question. We just...
Because we just don't watch that many things from this year, so we just do the things that you and I have seen that are worth talking about from that year. Good and bad.
And of course, I'm your stalwart host, Lee Russell, and I'm joined by my lovely host, Daniel Harper. How are you doing, sir?
I've had a few beers, in case you can't tell. It's fine.
Same here. Yeah.
I'm in a really good mood.
Awesome. Yeah, I think we're both on the recovery list here a little bit.
Yeah, I've been sick for a few weeks. I'm still kind of getting over a little bit of a cold. Hopefully, it doesn't come through too much on my voice. And if you do, just blame the alcohol. It's fine.
Mm-hmm. I had a lesser cold that I've just sort of gotten over as well. Daniel suffered a lot more than I have in the last little while. But
we were supposed to do Shaun of the Dead in the last few weeks, or like last week, and that didn't happen because I got sick. But hopefully, we'll do it in January. We'll figure it out. It's going to be fine.
Yeah. So first off, I did put it out on the Facebook group. I should have really did this earlier. I really should have. So I apologize. But I just threw it out there tonight that if any of our listeners had a list of stuff they watched for the first time in 2018 that they really thought was great, they could throw it at us. Or if anything they thought sucked, they could throw it at us too. We did get one response. We got it from Jeff Williams, who is a frequent commenter on the Facebook group. He basically gave us a top 5 first-time watches and most enjoyably cheesy films. So I'll just quickly go through his top 5 here. He says, number 5, The Unknown, another great Todd Browning-Lon Chaney collaboration featuring a Muppet baby Joan Crawford. Which that description alone makes me want to...
we put it on the list, definitely.
One he mentions that I am familiar with, A la Carta, which is a Mexican nunsploitation film. He says, surprisingly well photographed nunsploitation out of Mexico. Tina Romero is my new girlfriend. Yeah.
Fair enough.
I have seen this in the past. It's not only a nunsploitation film, it's kind of like a art house horror film in some ways as well. It's out of Mexico, so that just makes it doubly more interesting to check it out. So I think that's...
I'm always down for anything interesting. You know that.
Yeah. So. His number 3 is Shanghai Express, Von Sternberg and Dietrich in top form.
Is that the one with Jackie Chan?
I think that's not the one of Jackie Chan.
Oh, okay.
Unless Marlene Dietrich was still alive at that point.
I can imagine Marlene Dietrich, being the second banana to Jackie Chan, doing, really inventive fight scenes. I think that would be a really phenomenal film, honestly.
I mean, it has to be better than Owen Wilson, right?
Pretty much everything's better than Owen Wilson all the time. There are probably some exceptions to that, but I'm just going to let it ride. So, really, whatever you think you might want to cast Owen Wilson, just cast Luke Wilson instead. The better Wilson, honestly.
The better Wilson.
the only exception are Wes Anderson films, where, for all my problems with Wes Anderson, Owen Wilson fits into that universe better than Luke Wilson, I think. So,
Yeah, because he's more eccentric, I guess.
Because he's dopey and
He's dopey like Wes Anderson. Jeff's number 2, The Sweet Smell of Success. He says every character in this film is vile in the best possible way, but Lancaster and Curtis take it to another level of despicable. Interesting. I've never heard of this film, so
I've heard of it.
Okay. And his number 1 is The Bride Wore Black. Francois Truffaut duplicates Hitchcock's style and actually improves on the Woolrich novel by changing the ending to something even more fatalistic and inevitable. Jean Moreau is fantastic in the lead role. This sounds good as well.
Look at him talking about classic cinema. He's got Truffaut films on his list. I've got nothing of that caliber on my list.
I got to tell you, Jeff Williams watches a lot of good films. I follow him on Letterboxd, and he's up on his shit.
You should replace him with me. Or you should replace me with him ultimately on this podcast. Except he probably would not tell the jokes that I do, which is 2 votes in his favor ultimately. So.
And as for his most enjoyably cheesy film, he says, The Three Fantastic Supermen. Absolutely ridiculous, Fumetto-inspired action film starring Tony Kindle and Brad Harris of the Commissar X films and the guy who played Alley Cat in Sabata. Oh, okay. Over-the-top, silly, and enjoyable fun from Gianfranco Parolini. All right.
Awesome. I think we should put all those on the list. In fact, I was going to say we should definitely do some noir this year. Noir and spaghetti westerns are the 2 that I'm definitely like we should do that this year.
Spaghetti westerns, I totally agree.
No fucking vampire films.
Vampire films are...
No vampire films in 2019. So, and I think all of those deserve to go on the at least possible list for this year.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Jeff, very much. You're always suggesting interesting films, so that's good stuff. So I have nothing I want to mention that I've watched in the last little while, but I know you do, Jano, so I'll immediately just throw it over to you for that.
Sure. I saw 3 films this week, ironically enough, because I saw a couple of films over the Christmas break, and I got out of a film literally 3 hours before we started recording this. So, and I wanted to mention one of those made my top list this year. The other 2 I will discuss briefly. I saw Wreck-It Ralph 2, which is a really fun movie. I didn't love it enough to put it on my top 10 list, but if you like the first one, you're probably going to like the second one. I think the one thing that this series, have you seen the first one at all?
I haven't seen any of them, though.
Okay. I'm a big fan of these sort of like CG animated films in terms of, just kind of comfort food viewing. My wife watches a lot of the Disney films, and this is a Disney production. There's a lot to love in this film, particularly in terms of the thing that this one gets that a lot of these don't is that you're kind of, it follows a fairly complex emotional relationship between the 2 leads. Rather than sort of like, because if you watch the trailer for like Wreck-It Ralph 2, Ralph Breaks the Internet, you think it's going to be like, Ralph, like it's going to be a bunch of like internet jokes, like, right. Oh, and YouTube and Google. And there's some of that in the movie, like it's there if that's what you're looking for, but it has a spine that's really about basically what's a codependent friendship between these 2 people. And how that kind of infects the world around them, and it's a fairly for a kids film, it's actually a really sophisticated look. I like this one and the first film both kind of have this thing where the sort of where you think the plot's going to ends about 2/3 of the way through, and then it has like another more movie that really kind of gets at kind of the consequences, and I really like that about both of them. This didn't make my top 10 list, but it was a lot of fun. It's mostly out of theaters now, but again, if you like the first one, you're gonna like the second one. This is a film that has, I think there's enough there that even if you don't have kids, you could still kind of enjoy it. So cool. Thumbs up for me. The other one that I saw was Vice. This is the Over Wrong with Authority, which is one of my other podcasts that I do. We did The Big Short a little while ago, right, which is co-written and directed by Adam McKay, who's done a bunch of like comedy stuff. He's this is kind of his follow-up to that. He's done some like TV work that's sort of, and this is him kind of pushing his way into politics and kind of cultural issues in the same way that The Big Short did. I think The Big Short is one of my favorite films of the last 2 years, honestly. I think it is very nearly a quote-unquote great film with capital letters, that is marred by, just sort of a slight issues that kind of knock it down from that, in my opinion. Vice, I really wanted it to be that. I literally went and saw it today so that I could put it on my top 10 list. And it is kind of a giant fucking mess that nonetheless has some really brilliant stuff in it. That's kind of difficult to talk about without actually talking about it. Kind of the sort of the like where the Iraq War came from and kind of like kind of the history of the early 21st century sort of thing. But I think it's exquisitely well made. Although Christian Bale, outside of The Big Short, continually unimpressed by his performance. I think he leans more into caricature with this. Right. I think like if you're looking for someone who looks and sounds just like Dick Cheney, he does that. But nonetheless, he kind of comes across as really affectless and without, like, he doesn't really get to the heart of who that character is. And, the film just kind of does a lot of stuff without really, like, saying what's going on with the Iraq War and kind of who Dick Cheney was. And I think ultimately, I respect McKay for sort of making decisions as a filmmaker in terms of, like, the version of this that he wants to tell. Mm-hmm. But I think ultimately, he's too beholden to the biopic format. He spends too much time on, like, Cheney's early life when the real, like, story is the story of the Iraq War ultimately and the presidency. And I think that stuff gets short shrift. He just kind of misses the point in a lot of ways, and it's kind of a giant mess. Although it's a giant mess with some really amazing stuff in it, and it's other than Christian Bale, it's exquisitely well acted out. Amy Adams is fucking phenomenal in this. Amy Adams she's Lynn Cheney. She's Dick Cheney's wife. And, it really brought me back to our first, like, pseudo episode. Mm-hmm. What was it? American Hustle. Yeah. Where we talked about Amy Adams being, like, the greatest thing in that movie, like, by far. Again, she is just absolutely top-notch, phenomenal. I hope, she is sexy as fuck in everything she does. Mm-hmm. Even if she did not have her looks, I think she has the like, talent to be like, she could be a character actress. Like, she is amazing in this film, and if you see it just for her, then you will not be disappointed. There's a lot of other great stuff. I don't know, I kind of want to, like, see it with someone and, like, have more of a detailed conversation about it. I literally got out of it a couple hours ago, and I have lots of convoluted thoughts, but it is not on my top 10 list, and that's a disappointment because I really, really wanted to love this movie. Giant mess. Still probably worth seeing, especially if you're interested in that, but kind of a big swing and a miss for me.
I did see the trailer for it, and for what it looked like, okay, Christian Bale going really big, and if you're saying it spends way too much time on Dick Cheney, the person, before
right
what the movie's really supposed to be about, I don't want to see that shit and then see Christian Bale spitting image hamming it up as Dick Cheney. I don't necessarily need that.
I mean, it's I mean, the performance itself is just kind of flat. Like, I feel like it doesn't. So to me, the great political biography of the last 30 years or so is Oliver Stone's Nixon. That's the great film of its kind. That is the great American political movie ever made, as far as I'm concerned. Mm-hmm. And going into this, I was kind of thinking, based on how good The Big Short was, I thought this could be that. And I saw a lot of critics dismissing it, but based on kind of bad, what I thought were kind of bad arguments. And, like, people, kind of like wealthy, wealthy liberals who just weren't going to, like, get what it was going for. Mm-hmm. But I think the film really does. It really doesn't kind of do the thing it should do. And again, a disappointment for me. And maybe I'll kind of watch it again and have a little bit more of a kind of not think it's going to be like one of the greatest films of its kind and kind of like it more. I don't dislike the film. I mean, I still think it's worth watching, but it really just misses everything that I think is interesting about that era. It feels very much like W, the film about George W. Bush. In a lot of ways, it could serve as a kind of a double feature with that. It has a lot of the same issues and a lot of the same strengths. Although I think that the high points in Vice are better than the high points in W. But I think Vice, in terms of, like, the sort of central thesis, misses the point more than Oliver Stone's W does, if that makes sense. So sure. There's a lot of good stuff in Vice, but I'm just frustrated with it.
So we're going to take our first break here. We're going to play a little bit of music, some podcast promos, and then we're going to come back with our best and worst first-time watches of 2018.
You're traveling through another dimension. A dimension of not only film and sound, but mind. A journey into an auditory movie review adventure that must be experienced to be believed. There's a signpost up ahead. Your next stop, the Doomsday Clock. You can extract the Witch versus the Doomsday Clock podcast by either searching for WYCH on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, SoundCloud, TuneIn, and on your Android device. Witch versus the Doomsday Clock is a proud member of Legion Podcasts, so prepare yourself. The podcast ice is gonna break!
Did you ever see a film at such a young age it left you traumatized with cinematic wounds? Necrophilia. It's a dead issue, man. Don't push it. Cinema Psyops is a weekly podcast documenting an ongoing experiment on the mind of an unwilling test subject.
No one should have to watch this movie.
Oh, no one should have to watch this?
No one should have to watch this movie.
Surprisingly, it's not a topic that a lot of people really want to tackle.
I'm shocked, prudes.
I know, really.
Right?
It's the next sexual frontier that no one wants to explore.
I am, in the most sincerest of senses, disappointed in you.
It takes a powerful goddess like Connie, jam her arm down the monster's throat and kill it. Oh, I'm still tripping out over that. Even as a kid, I was like, I gotta find a girl like that. Every week, I get a new look of disappointment that I never thought I could get out of her.
Unimaginable. At 12 years old, you should not be watching this movie.
Obviously.
At 13, you should not be. 14, you shouldn't be. I'm not entirely sure even 17-year-olds should be watching this movie.
Just because you're offended by something doesn't mean that you have the right to demand that it doesn't exist. Watching this film again, I had all of this like little nerd glee with everything that kept
little
popping
history
up.
all popping up
absolutely.
at you.
So I totally loved this film.
Hey, I know why you couldn't see that. It's because your brain's warped from watching this shit at 12 years old.
Yeah, this is a rough movie. I told you ahead of time when we were getting ready to do it that it was going to be a rough one. How
could you watch this shit at 12?
Because physical wounds heal, cinematic ones don't. Listen to Cinema Psyops.
You go through your week with the same old routine.
What you really want is some blood and thunder in your life.
Well, friend, you found it.
The Cromcast is an adventurous journey through the history of two-fisted pulp stories.
With your hosts, John,
Josh,
and Luke.
We have action,
horror,
and adventure, all through the lens of pulp luminary Robert E. Howard.
Don't just stay in your ordinary life.
Find your pulp life at thecromcast.blogspot.com.
The Cromcast.
The Cromcast.
The Cromcast.
A podcast for the barbarian at heart.
Hey, swinger. The swinger knows the way it's happening and where the actions are gonna be. Well, and if there is a good thing shaking, the swinger finds it naturally. Actual evidence tends to show the swinger was a one and then a go. So leave your old routine and make the scene. Baby, come and swing with me. The swinger only lives the good life. The kind that comes to very few. Well, and if a swinger hasn't done it, it's 'cause it's too much trouble to do. Verified circumstance tends to say the swinger was a one and then a yeah. If I can do your best, I'll do the rest. Baby, let me swing with you. Come on along, let's put the world on. Come on along, let's make it move. Come on along, baby, get with it. Forget that old conventional groove. You're going to see the way it's happening and where the actions are gonna be. Well, and if there is a good thing shaking, You're gonna find it natural. Only experience shows you how the swinger was a one and then a wowie wow. So leave your old routine and make the scene. Baby, come and swing with me now. Baby, come and swing with me now. Baby, come and swing with me. Yeah.
Okay, we're back. How do you want to do this, Daniel? Do you want to blow through our worst stuff first, get all the negative out of the way, or?
Yeah, let's do the worst first, and then kind of come back to the best, because I feel like that's the way to do it. And the way I always do these is I do them in alphabetical order as opposed to numerical order. I have 3 on my kind of worst list, and one of those is really just kind of disappointment, kind of thing, as opposed to this is absolutely terrible. I just didn't see that many movies this year, honestly. Yeah. So I feel like maybe we'll kind of go, I'll do one, then you do one, and then I know you have more than I do, and then you can kind of
go through them. I think this will work out because I have 6 on my worst list and you have 3, so you do 1, I'll do 2. And
yeah, that makes sense. Sure. All right. This should not be any surprise for anyone who's been following us for any time. A film that I put on my worst of this year was Bright. We have a Netflix film that we did a full-length commentary for, which I think kind of came down to, at a certain point, I think you and I were both like, what the fuck is this shit at a certain point? Really just go and listen back to that commentary track and you'll kind of understand like how terrible that movie is. I might have actually watched this for the first time very late in the year in 2017, but it's worth putting on the 2018 list. It's just that bad. So, yeah.
Now that I think about it, maybe I can't remember if I first watched it for the commentary we did, or and then we watched it together. But I can't remember when I watched it, but it should have been on this list. I can't remember. But at the same time, I don't think I necessarily hated it enough. Like, I'm going by my sort of letterbox grades here on my list. So everything I hated was 1.5 stars or lower.
Sure. I don't do that stuff. I just kind of go back through. Yeah. I go through the stuff we do, and I go back through. Like, I look at our list, and I look at like the movies released in the year, and there might have been like a movie that I saw and just didn't, anything that kind of came in my mind. So it may very well be that you mentioned something, and I go, "Oh yeah, I hated that too." So we're just gonna go from there.
I think Bright might have got 2 stars from me or something like that. I can't remember.
Yeah. No, I really fucking hated that movie. So
fair enough. So the first one,
look at Lindsay Ellis's video, Bright Bad, and
look at all Lindsay Ellis's videos because she's fucking brilliant.
She is amazing.
Yeah.
Anyway,
first one, it's from 2016. It's called Passengers, directed by Morton Tyledum, and it's starring Jennifer Lawrence and Chris Pratt. And this is
the rapey space movie.
It's fucking repulsive. It's the level of just violation of another person that Chris Pratt's character does to Jennifer Lawrence in this film. It's not even, he just rapes her in her cryopod or something like that. It's much more sinister than that.
Right,
and then she eventually forgives him, which is just
which only makes it worse. Right? Yeah. No.
It's basically.
No, I saw the ads for that and thought like, that actually looks like a kind of a decent little like sci-fi thrillery kind of thing. And then I saw the reviews, which were like, and then like rape things happen, and I went like, no, I don't need to see that. That's fine.
There's actually good sci-fi stuff in this, but then there's all of this basically you violated me in ways even worse than rape kind of thing. Like you basically sentenced me to death with you on this ship without my consent, and you lied to me to do it. And oh my god! And then there's Imagine Dragons in the soundtrack, which just
which only makes everything worse. Yeah, no, I get it. But,
oh my god, this is like what were these two thinking when their agents threw these scripts towards them and was like, oh yeah, I want to do this film because my god, it is bad. Like it is so bad. It's insulting actually. The idea that Jennifer Lawrence is like, I'm okay with it in the end. This is like the perfect movie for any fucking incel out there who wants to find yeah, that bitch deserved it. Like, she'll come around of it.
Just to hate it. That's kind of where I land on it.
It's terrible. Moving on, another one I'll mention. First, we take Brooklyn from 2018. This just popped up on Netflix. It's from someone called Danny A. Abek-Kaiser, I guess is his fucking name. It starts out kind of promising. Apparently this guy's just like this nightclub guy who has a lot of money, so he's just started getting the movies and make movies. And so he directs it and stars in it as well, which is not a good idea. It starts out promising. Is basically this guy gets released from a prison in Israel and comes back to the U.S. and he takes in with some relatives and basically just starts a life of crime. This is basically Martin Scorsese, the highlight reel, if Martin Scorsese had brain damage.
Sure. If you were to hit Martin Scorsese in the head with a wrench a few times and then tell him to go direct a generic crime picture.
The most disappointing thing about this, though, is the fact that, oh my God, Harvey Keitel is in this, and he's playing a Russian mobster. And
does he have a terrible Russian accent?
Doesn't have an accent at all. That's the thing. He is, without a doubt, the worst Russian mobster I've ever seen. It'd be understandable, like, okay, so he's like a third-generation Russian in America, so he doesn't have the accent anymore or something like that. But no, he's supposed to be like an old-school Russian mobster who's running in opposition to our hero in this. He has no accent at all, and he's in the movie for like 5 minutes, and it's like enough of time to... If I was in charge of the Razzies, I'd be giving him like worst actor. And
it sounds like they offered him $50,000 and he showed up.
I think so. Yes.
Yeah.
It's terrible. It ends terrible. Like it just kind of ends too. There's no like real climax to the film or anything. It just ends. And it's like, okay, moving on. So what's your next one, Daniel?
All right. This should be no surprise. Ghost Galleon. We did a bunch of 70s horror this year. You look back through our history for this year. You look back through our 2018. Half of it is 70s vampire movies and horror and stuff. Just based on our schedule, we just did that forever. This was the only one that literally just made me fall asleep. This all the other movies we saw, I had a memory of. I have almost no memory of Ghost Galleon, and that's probably a positive thing. Really all I remember is they're on a ship and you can't see anything, and people are wandering around, and then vaguely skeletons stab at them or whatever, and that's literally all I remember. I have 3 seconds of footage in my head for this movie. So yeah, that's Ghost Galleon for me. And that's the only one of the old movies that I actually put on my worst of list. We actually had a lot of... I didn't put a lot of my best of list, honestly. There was a lot of that was solid, on my list. A lot of nice performances, things that I enjoyed watching, but didn't quite make my best of list. Ghost Galleon definitely was on that. I even kind of approached this film because I had talked to you and Cord about it, and I'm going to like this film. I'm actively going to like this film to spite you, and then no, this is terrible.
Okay, The Mummy from 2017. The
Tom Cruise piece of bullshit. We've already discussed this one, right? So I don't know that I don't need to tell the same jokes again. It's gonna be fine. Yeah.
It's terrible shit. It's bad.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on.
Had no. What I'll mention from Junpei Mizuzaki. It's an animated film from 2018 called Batman Ninja. And it's probably the worst DC animated property I've ever seen. It has an interesting visual style to it, but it's basically the idea is let's take Batman and put him in this convoluted plot of time travel where they go back to ancient Japan, and then all of his bad guys have all of a sudden become feudal lords in Japan, and he has to fight them all. And that's the dumbest fucking thing I've ever seen. It's just... stupid. It's, hey, let's put Batman in this situation. It's no, you actually have to write a good story.
Yeah, no. It's all in the execution at that point. Okay, yes, the Joker is a feudal lord. Tell me a story now. Yeah, no, I get that.
Yeah, it's just horrible. So moving on.
Yeah. This one is one I feel like it's hard to say this is the worst of the year, in that technically speaking it's pretty solid, and I've talked about it on the podcast before, but definitely on that sort of disappointment, I'm sorry I paid money for this, it's just a repeat of the first one, and that's The Incredibles 2, which I don't know if you had a chance to see yet. It literally just, repeats all the plot points of the first one. I really kind of avoided putting like superhero movies on my list. Like last year I put a couple of the Marvel films on my list. This is the worst of the superhero movies I saw this year. Not even that it's terrible as much as what the fuck is the point of this except for to make a shitload of money? And it made a shitload of money. So good for you, Disney. Good for you, Pixar. Good for you, Brad Bird, and etc. It literally is just a repeat of the first one. It's not as good as the first one. If you're in the place where you're going to see it, you're going to see it. But what the fuck is the point of this? If you're going to make Incredibles 2, do something more interesting with it. And there will be another film that I'm going to talk about shortly, which really just solidified this deserves to be on my bottom list. So,
All right. Okay, last two I'll mention here and get all this shit out of the way.
Yeah, and then we get to talk about good films, right?
Yeah, this one is one that I think solely got noticed because Jason Momoa is now Aquaman and he's a big megastar. It's Braven from 2018, directed by Lynn Olding.
Does his mom turn into a bear?
No.
Too bad. Too bad.
It's a throwback to 80s action movies in a way, because it's this idea of you have to suspend your disbelief and basically, I buy that this big muscled up badass is just your typical family man who finds himself all of a sudden in trouble and has to save his family kind of thing. Like it's kind of like the Commando formula, right? It's like, I buy that Arnold Schwarzenegger is the father to Alyssa Milano and they just have this cutesy little existence. This is just a terrible, how can I put it? They just throw too much plot into this. It could have worked because I think Jason Momoa is an excellent action star. I think he's really good.
Sure. Yeah.
But he looks like fucking Conan the Barbarian. He played Conan the Barbarian. And in this film, he's just depicted as this typical business owner who has to defend his family against drug dealers. All of us, if they just give him the slightest background, like if they mention, his Navy SEAL past or something like that, just right. Something. But it hinges on him being just this normal guy who all of a sudden is killing people with guns, throwing axes at people and shit, and murdering people, willy-nilly that are attacking his family. And there's all these weird subplots and shit that show up, and it's just a mess. And it's filmed.
The key with that kind of film is, you keep it really clean and really simple, and don't give us extraneous shit. Just deliver the goods and get out.
Another thing that bothered me is it's filmed in the Maritime Provinces here in Canada. It's filmed in Newfoundland, but it's supposed to substitute for somewhere in the USA, but they never tell you where. It's
probably supposed to be Arizona. I believe that.
No, it's a frozen wasteland. So
no. That's how. Then that's my thought.
Yeah, but it sucks. And
since you mentioned Commando, I was just thinking, I'm just going to throw in a gag right here. Since we watched Commando earlier, I think there should be a Commando 2. Only it should be now you bring Alyssa Milano back, and she has to save her father from bad guys who are going off and doing things in the desert or something. She should be the action hero, saving old man Arnold Schwarzenegger.
You know what? That's brilliant. That is good. That's seriously good. I would watch that movie because I want to see Melissa Milano sweating in a tank top shooting at people.
I want to see her, I just want to see a shot of her. I want to bring back Radon Chong today. Yes. I met your father 30 years ago, right? And then I want to see, the montage of her drawing the, lines on her face and, sticking the knives and all the little vests and stuff. That's what I want to see. Yeah.
The son of the main villain from the original Commando is trying to take revenge, so he kidnaps Arnold Schwarzenegger and Radon Chong, who are now retired in their little country home. They're drinking iced tea on the porch, and all of a sudden this mercenary squad jumps in and captures them. I'm going to torture you. And then yeah, Alyssa Milano, she has to come out of, whatever she's doing.
It turns out that she's been working for like some secret government agency
right.
for like 15 years, and she's, she's been working for the CIA. I mean, she's actually. Did you see the conspiracy theory that like the real life Alyssa Milano was supposedly going to assassinate Brett Kavanaugh during the Kavanaugh hearings?
Oh, really?
Yeah, because she was there. There are like photos of her like staring him down from like behind his head or whatever, and there was some right-wing chud who had measured the distance and was like, "Oh yeah, she was there. She was gonna like for a day." There was a right-wing conspiracy theory that Alyssa Milano in real life, the actress, was going to assassinate Brett Kavanaugh.
Get the fuck out of your parents' basement, you fucking idiot!
Yeah. This is somebody who makes more money in a year than I make in a decade. I'm sure. By the way.
My God, fucking! I got news for you, moron. Every fucking woman in that hearing was staring daggers at Brett Kavanaugh. There's multiple pictures of this happening where everyone was just looking at this motherfucker like, is he serious? Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I want the film to start, is where she actually kills Brett Kavanaugh. Can we get Robert Rodriguez to direct is kind of the key, right?
He would do that too. I think he would. That's fucking great.
Do it Machete style.
That would piss so many people off. That's so good.
Let's get Robert Rodriguez on the phone. I think we can make this happen.
Get Robert De Niro back to play the Brett Kavanaugh character. Because,
yeah.
I mean, he played such a good character in Machete.
No, let's get Matt Damon to do it, since he did it on SNL.
Oh, there you go. Yeah,
Robert De Niro can play her handler.
I wish Alyssa Milano was my handler. Oh, God.
Yeah. I think Alyssa Milano should, Machete style, sleep with, Lindsay Lohan and her mom in a scene in the movie, yeah.
Yeah, if it's Herbie the Love Bug era.
Sure, yeah.
She was of age at that point, wasn't she?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay. That's kind of like the tipping point right there. So the last one I'll mention, and this is the worst movie I saw this year, and I want to erase it from my fucking memory.
I've been trying to avoid you having to talk about it, but apparently we have to go there. So
this is directed by someone called Hector Hernandez, and I hope he never gets another job in making movies. You should just go back to whatever the fuck he did beforehand. It's called Day of the Dead Bloodline from 2018, and it is a remake of Day of the Dead, and it is basically Me Too, the zombie movie, because it's fucking terrible. The entire concept is stupid, and one of the central focal points of this is it involves the main female character who, Day of the Dead has a main female character, the original one. In this one...
You mean it has a woman in it? Got it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No.
In this one, the bub zombie, quote-unquote, is a guy who tried to... He's basically an incel rapist who tried to rape her before the zombie apocalypse happened. And he becomes a zombie, and, just like Bud the zombie who starts to remember being human again, this one remembers he's a rapist. And there's a scene where he basically tries to attack her again, and it's the dumbest shit I've ever seen in years. It's just so stupid. It's the fucking... It's actually worse than that first Day of the Dead remake from like the early 2000s or whatever.
This sounds like a delightful film for the whole family. Ultimately,
it's terrible. It's so bad. I can't believe anyone. George Romero. I'm glad he's dead because
you tell me that premise. I can't even imagine the good version. You tell me you've got to make a movie. Here's the thing you're going to do. Write something good, and we'll throw a lot of money at it. We'll make it good. And I'm like, yeah, I got nothing. Like, it's done.
Yeah. This sort of line might work.
Like, that's the kind of edgelord shit that might have worked in like 2005. But
right.
It's 2018, people. Like, come on, let's move on.
It's so bad. It's terrible, and I want to purge it from my fucking memory. I hope this podcast.
We can now not talk about it ever again. We're done.
So we can move on to our best of lists. First, we'll hit the honorable mentions.
I have no honorable mentions. I have 10 movies on my list, and so.
Okay, so I'll just go through the honorable mentions really quick. Okay, so first one, The Swinger from 1966, George Sidney and Margaret Goodness. Like, it's what else can you say? It's basically Anne Margaret porn without nudity is what it is. It's
glorious.
Yeah, and let's see how sexy she is. Let's get really close to showing her naked with that fucking leotard thing she's wearing at one point, but we're not going to quite go there.
All I have to say is paint dance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's beautiful. Avengers Infinity War, Joe Russo, Anthony Russo. I like it a lot. I think it's probably the most entertaining Marvel film in a long while. Like, everything's sort of come to that, you know? Although, I found a meme this week that kind of dispels the entire film. Thanos snaps his finger and turns half the universe into dust. And then you see the end scene where Nick Fury and a couple people turn to dust. They pointed out that if it was daytime in Wakanda, it should be nighttime where Nick Fury is turning to dust, apparently.
Oh, well, you know.
So I was like, okay, well, we just need to scrap this entire franchise.
Totally. Yeah, no, it's over. Yeah, and that's it. I actually rewatched that. You know, when I saw that theatrically, and kind of left the theater slightly kind of wanting more, feeling like it was all kind of build up with no reward. But I rewatched it. It just showed up on Netflix, and I was like, just kind of put it on, drinking a beer, before bed, and I watched the whole thing. And I'm like, once you know that, like, that's what the film's going to be, it's remarkably efficient at doing what it's going to do. And
that's the point of the film. I'm the same as you. I went into it forgetting the fact that, yes, there's going to be a part 2 to it. So
no, I knew there was going to be a part 2, but I just kind of it doesn't work on the rhythms of kind of what a traditional film's going to do, where it's going to kind of give you kind of a beginning, middle, and end. It's sort of, this is the first half, and then sets up whatever's going to happen in Endgame, and so you kind of have to view it as part of that whole thing. But like, once you know that's what it is, it does the thing it's going to do, and it's really entertaining at doing it. So,
totally agree.
We're going to do in 2019, we're going to start a Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast. Yes. And so we will wait to discuss that in more detail when we get to that. But that's,
Unlike our long-suffering potential Homicide the Series podcast, this one should probably happen in 2019. Yeah.
So the Homicide podcast is really just dependent on, us having the time and energy to go into doing something that actually requires us to use our brains, whereas the MCU podcast will mostly be, let's watch a movie and then talk about it for 30 minutes, which is much more where we are in terms of personality. We should get to the probably in 2021 or so. We should probably start the Homicide podcast. I think that's good plan.
We'll get there. Future goals. Another one I'll mention, My Friend Dahmer from 2017, directed by Mark Myers. Pretty good little character study on Jeffrey Dahmer. If you're looking for a true crime film, this is not the film for you. It's much more interested in just kind of exploring what caused Dahmer to be Dahmer eventually. It does capture high school life very well, how he was ostracized and accepted for a while and treated like the school freak and stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff you can I can kind of sympathize with Dahmer to a certain degree, you kind of see
up until the point he starts eating people. You're kind of I'm with you, Yeah,
but you do sort of get a good feel of his early life and what led to him becoming what he became. So it's kind of a prequel to a true crime film is basically what it is. And it's very good. It's very good. I liked it. Next one we'll mention, Thor Ragnarok. Taika Waititi, whatever the fuck is the guy's name?
Taika Waititi.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Taika, whatever your name is. I like it. It's funny. It's a really good stopgap Marvel film. It's kind of, hey, all that stuff that happened in the first 2 Thor films, it actually built to something, and it's actually fun. And
I really love Thor Ragnarok. It's one of my favorite of the MCU. And
it
was on my best of list last year. So
it's just super entertaining. One I'll mention from Matt Palmer, Caliber from 2018. This is a really fucking tense suspense film about 2 guys who go on a. I guess I'll thank my friend Duncan McLeish from Podcast Under the Stairs mentioning this. It's called a stag do in Scotland. So it's not necessarily your traditional stag party or whatever. It's just 2 friends go out before one of them's getting married, and they just have a last hurrah, and have fun. So they go out on a hunting trip and one of them takes a shot at a deer and misses the deer, but kills one of the locals in the small town that they take the hunting trip to, a local kid. And the father shows up, and then the friend takes the extra step of killing him because he's a witness. And then they have to try to escape the town without being suspected as being the killers. And man, the suspense in this really ramps up. I don't know if the ending necessarily lands as well as it should, but I really liked it.
That sounds like one I'd like to see. We should put that, put it on the maybe list. Yeah,
on Netflix, so it's there. Patrick Bryce, another one of his films, is going to show up on this list later. But Creep 2 from 2017, found footage film. It's the sequel to the first Creep. It's benefited from being unchained because you basically already have the background information. You sort of know about the killer and Creep and all that stuff, so it gets to explore and sort of stretch its legs out, and it's equally as interesting. I don't know if it's necessarily as good as Creep, but it's still very entertaining and very creepy. Like, it's called Creep for a reason. Both films in the series are creepy as fuck, so that works. One will mention from Jerry Schwartzberg from 1987, Street Smart. This is one I did on Cinema Beef with Gary Hill, where we did this and Superman 3, because these were the two projects Christopher Reeve did with Canon Films. Huh. So he was allowed to make Street Smart if he was agreed to do Superman 3 with Canon Films.
Superman 4.
Yeah, Superman 4. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. They're both equally kind of crap, but
no, Superman 3 is a genius.
Okay, we could disagree.
Have you seen it recently?
I've seen it in the last couple of years.
Have you listened to the live commentary Kit Power and Jack Graham and I did on Superman 3?
I did, and it's not as persuasive as maybe you think.
I think you're wrong. It's fine.
Okay, it's all right. I don't like that film, but fucking Street Smart is not necessarily a great film. I mean, Christopher Reeves he's kind of bland in it.
Does he catch a bullet in his teeth?
No, he doesn't. But Morgan Freeman is amazing in this film, and this is Morgan Freeman's. I believe it's his first film role. He plays this vicious fucking pimp, charismatic but vicious as fuck. And it's all about that performance. It's like a hidden gem that I don't think a lot of people know about, honestly. They just think of Morgan Freeman as the what's-his-face went through a mile of shit. Andy Dufresne went through a mile of shit to get out of Shawshank and all that shit. It's like, no, this is Morgan Freeman, just off the fucking chain, fucking nasty, vicious pimp who's one time smiling at you and treating you like his friend, and then next time he's threatening a hooker's life, and it's pretty good just for that. Like, it's definitely worth seeing.
Jonathan Demme wanted him to play Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs.
Oh, really?
The studio refused to cast a black actor, out of a fear that it would look like they were making it a black man was a serial killer sort of thing,
Oh, well,
which it's 1990. I understand. There are ways of kind of dealing with that issue that maybe,
But you know what? That's way more interesting, too, because there's so few black serial killers, too.
Yeah.
That is actually fascinating concept. Give me a black fucking Hannibal Lecter. I like that idea. That's actually pretty fucking brilliant. And he'd be perfect for it. God damn, he could do that. If you watch his performance in this, you could see yeah, he could do that. He could do it.
Yeah, that's a detail I learned reading Which Lie Did I Tell, which is William Goldman's second book about screenwriting. William Goldman died this year, so
nice.
Go read that book.
Yeah, I think I should. I'll mention Carnal Knowledge from 1971, Mike Nichols. That's a depressing film.
It's on my list. You can move on.
Okay, yeah. Small Town Crime from Isom Nelms and Lan Nelms. I'm not familiar with their work, if they've done anything else, but this is do you know the actor John Hawkes?
Yeah, I know him.
Yeah.
He was he's in Deadwood among other things. Yeah.
Really good character actor. This is one where he gets to carry the film, and he does an admirable job as this guy who basically takes on a murder case. He picks up this prostitute who's half dead on the road, and she dies, and he basically feels determined to try to find out why she died. So he pretends to be a private eye and goes around and does a private eye job. And he's this horrible drunk, like this horrible alcoholic. But it's a really good little sort of character study in neo-noir, and I thought it was really well done.
That sounds... I would definitely like to see that, so definitely put it on our list.
Sweet. I'll also mention Cam from 2018, Daniel Goldhaber. This is an interesting one. It delves into the life of cam girls. I mean, if you're familiar with My Free Cams or something along those lines, very much...
no knowledge of this.
Okay.
Never heard of it. Hold on, cam girls? Please tell me more, my friend.
No, but this is a really in-depth, respectful kind of look into their lives. It treats sex workers like actual professionals who do their job, and it's also a really disturbing, uncanny horror tale as well, because some really weird shit happens in this film. I think the film maybe falters a little bit at the end, because where the character starts and where she ends up kind of feels maybe a false note. I don't know. I think I need more opinions on that. I think I need to discuss it with people, but it's really well done.
You had me at Cam Girls, honestly. Like, we should do a series of like films about sex workers. I think we could do a month of films about sex workers this year.
That works. But it's really good. It really does get into that world. Creepy stuff that happens with the cam girls. Like, it's basically a plot where the cam girls are being replaced by exact duplicates by a really weird means. I don't want to go into spoiling it too much, but that is not as creepy as some of the men in this film who are the sponsors of these cam girls, like the frequent guys who, like the guys who are giving tokens to all their favorite cam girls and like boosting their rankings and stuff in campsites and stuff like that. It's fucking...
those guys, Lee?
Yeah, those guys.
Those guys. Do you know what those guys are like, Lee? I think you might know what those guys are like.
See, I wouldn't, because I don't have a credit card, so I can't give tokens.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So,
they don't have credit cards in Canada. I get it. It's fine.
No, I just don't have credit cards because I hate them. So, yeah, I only watch. I don't fucking throw money at these women. So, yeah, there you go. And the final one I'll mention from 27. Shut up! Stop laughing. Our backwards Canadian ways where we don't have credit cards. Yeah. Final one I'm going to mention: T2 Train Spotting from Danny Boyle. I thought it was a really great follow-up to the original Train Spotting. It has the perfect balance. It has the perfect tone that you would expect from a follow-up from that film, where the first film is very bombastic and in your face and gross. This film is much more reserved, and it's much more about these guys and how they've somehow survived 20 years later, and they're just losers. They're still fucking losers. And no matter what they do, they're fucking losers. But now they're burnout losers. I thought the performances were great. If you can buy that these guys would survive 20 years later, then it really is a really satisfying follow-up to the first film.
Yeah, no, it's funny how that film kind of came and went really quickly in terms of, I feel like it was sort of like hyped and then just sort of disappeared.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because it's actually really good.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess maybe some fans of the original were expecting like more of the same kind of thing. Like, Renton and his buddies running around the streets doing gross things and getting heists and all kinds of weird shit. And it's like, no, it's a sad adult Renton and Sick Boy fucking going to some shitty, sad club and stealing people's wallets and shit like that,
Right, yeah.
It's very depressing, and it's very much what it should be. It's like these guys are still fucking losers, and then So yeah, there we go.
So I have one more detail to add about a movie I talked about earlier, Wreck-It Ralph 2. If you're at all curious, and this kind of came up in my mind as you were talking. If you're at all curious about whether or not you want to see the film, so if you saw the trailers, you saw there's a scene where Vanellope, who's the Sarah Silverman character, a little girl, goes and meets all the former Disney princesses because Disney owns all this, and so there's Marvel stuff, there's Star Wars stuff. I mean, that's one of the joys of the film, is that it's all kind of one thing. Like, Disney owns everything now, and Mickey Mouse will never go out of copyright, and that's horrible. But also, you get to see all this in one movie. So Vanellope goes into like a like a dressing room where all the Disney princesses are. Well, what you didn't see in the trailer was, they realized that Vanellope is wearing all these like comfy like sweaters and like hoodies and stuff, and they call her the comfy princess. And then it cuts to the Sleeping Beauty's birds. They make like clothes for all the other girls, and then you get to see like the comfy princesses, and it's one of the sexiest things I've seen.
Oh.
If you have any fantasies about Disney princesses, for me, seeing them all in like comfy sweaters and like t-shirts and pajamas, I just want to see the After Dark version of that, because there's hardcore fucking going on.
I'm sure that will be on Pornhub.
Not
already.
It was pretty delightful, and it's just a great little scene, and it was definitely on that like, oh, this is a very happy, and it's not like they're not pushing that at all in the film, but in my head it was like, I don't know, this is I want to go and hang out with the comfy Disney princesses and be like, I have really soft shoulders, ladies. It's fine.
I kind of want the uncomfortable Disney princesses, the ones that are going to hurt you a little bit, maybe.
Well, that's fair, but I would like them to be comfortable because they
can go either way. Like honestly, just
the
entire Disney princess lineup, whatever. Yeah. I think we should take a break and then we'll come back to our best of list.
Cool.
You ungodly warlock. Ungodly warlock.
All right, we're back, and we'll go through our best of 2018 first time watches. So I have a list of 15. You said you have a list of 10?
Sure. Yes, I have a list of 10. Okay. So Do you have like a numbered list?
I do have a couple at the end of it that are the absolute best of, but the rest of them are just sort of toss-ups kind of thing.
Okay. So why don't you give me like a couple of your toss-ups first, and then that way we'll kind of alternate a little bit more.
Why don't I just give you my first 5, and then we can alternate after that?
That sounds good, yeah.
Okay. So my first one is from 2015. It's Remember by Adam E. Gowan.
Yeah, no, I've been wanting to see that ever since you mentioned it to me.
Yeah, Christopher.
It's been on my. I put it on my Amazon Prime, watch list, and then like everything I do, I just put it on the watch list and then never actually watch it. So
Christopher Plummer gets enlisted. He's in an old folks home and he gets enlisted into becoming a Nazi hunter, and he escapes the old folks home basically and goes to seek out this guy who was apparently this Nazi who killed his wife and was like a commandant of a camp or whatever. And there's a twist in it that I definitely will not spoil, but the film never feels like exploitation. It never feels like it's lying to you. It never feels cheap. It all works, and the twist is very emotional. When I first talked about it at the beginning of the year as one of the films I watched, that one of the reasons that this really stuck with me is because the main character is suffering from Alzheimer's. So it reminded me of my grandfather. There is a bit of an emotional connection there, but his performance rang true. Like the performance was fucking spot on. Like I experienced the same stuff from my grandfather, basically. The same sort of way he did things and thought and reacted and turned on a dime kind of thing. So I really like this one. I think a lot of people should see this. It's a really good little film, and at the same time it's a Nazi hunting film, killing Nazis. So
which is always going to be a good thing.
Yeah.
It's very 2018.
From 2017, Wind River from Taylor Sheridan. This is starring Jeremy Renner and Elizabeth Olsen, the good Olsen, not one of the Olsen twins, but the actual talented Olsen. Just this really good suspense thriller set in a really frozen wasteland, and it's probably Jeremy Renner's best performance. I love the fact that Jeremy Renner's this. I think everyone tries to pretend he's a pretty boy actor, but he's like an ugly motherfucker, and he's just a really excellent.
Sexy as a motherfucker,
No, I mean,
but not in a pretty way.
I would equate him with a guy like Daniel Craig. Daniel Craig is not a traditionally handsome man. But
have you seen his penis?
I might have seen it on film. I can't remember, but I don't really care. That's not how I equate attractiveness.
There are photos of Daniel Craig's penis online. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay, well, I'm sure it's great. I'm sure it's better than mine. But fucking,
if only because it's attached to Daniel Craig. Right?
Well, I mean, come on, it's definitely had more miles on it than mine has. But yeah, no, I mean, Daniel Craig, I love because he's not a traditionally handsome dude, but he's a great actor, and he pulls off James Bond. Like you still believe he's James Bond. He's sexy. He's irresistible to win. Jeremy Renner, I think he's in the same sort of league as that. Like he's not a traditionally handsome dude, but he works as a leading man all the same, as far as I'm concerned.
I feel like Jeremy Renner could totally have a career doing like romantic comedies in the way that like after the X-Men films, Hugh Jackman kind of did a bunch of romantic comedies for a while. I kind of feel like Jeremy Renner could do that if he wanted to, but
I don't really want to see him do that. I don't want to see him in a coffee shop talking to like fucking.
I could totally see him like hanging out with Jennifer Lopez, making coffee, and and then they get together at the end. And I think I would like to see that personally. But mostly.
And Michael Caine drops in as their eccentric older neighbor in the apartment building, and he has a romance with Kathy Bates or something.
It's Alfie 2 is what it is.
Jesus Christ, no, that's not going to happen. But
return of Alfie. There we go.
But yeah, Wind River's good. It gets really gritty and fucking super serious at the end, but it's really well done. From Junya Sato from 1975. The Bullet Train, and this is a Sonny Chiba film, although that's overselling it because Sonny Chiba is actually a minor character in this film. Although, every time you see this film on a collection or DVD, it's like Sonny Chiba, The Bullet Train. This is the precursor. It's 20 years ahead. It's basically what Speed ripped its plot off from.
Sure.
Except for instead of being on a bus, it's on a train. Bomb on a train. If the train slows down, the bomb will go off. Very simple plot. Sonny Chiba is still really, really good in his minor role in this as the train driver, but it's really well done. It's a really good action film from Japan from 1975. So there you go. Awesome. From Lynn Ramsey from 2017, You Were Never Really Here. Joaquin Phoenix is a hitman. I mentioned this one before.
Yeah,
it's really well done. A hitman with PTSD, and he is a guy who is special forces. He's now tasked as a specialist who recovers kidnapped victims from for the families of rich people who are prone to the threats of having their loved ones kidnapped. And he gets in over his head in an intricate plot called these rich fucks who basically use him as a pawn. And Joaquin Phoenix just gives this really great physical performance. He bulked up for the film. He's definitely I mentioned before, he's not fat. He's just burly would be the word for it. And he's believable as this guy who can just take a massive amount of punishment and still fuck people up. And it's another one that I think is overlooked quite a bit from the last year or so. And we're checking out to finish off the sort of five floaters here. Written on the Wind, 1956, Douglas Sirk. I love this fucking film, man. Glad we did a bunch of these. The performances are great. Melodrama. It's really well. I don't even know what to say.
It's Dorothy Malone. It's Dorothy Malone. Amazing. And Douglas Sirk, probably one of his great films. I mean, just this phenomenal little satire of this would have gone on my list. I put another Dorothy Malone on my list because I figured you'd put this one on, and I wanted to kind of break it up. But this could very easily. I mean, this was literally on my list until I took it off to put another one on. 5 minutes before we started recording, I switched it for another one. This is a phenomenal film. Everybody should see it. 1956?
Yep.
Check it out. Just seriously, it's amazing.
It's good, even if it's not in your usual wheelhouse. Because I mean, that's where I come from with this. It's Daniel throwing this weird melodrama from 1956 at me. The only catch for it was Dorothy Malone's in it, so I'm going to check it out. But otherwise, this is kind of something I would generally never watch, and I watched it and I loved it.
I sat down. I was watching MST3K over the holidays because I was sick, and I know people don't like MST3K. I know you're not a big fan. I was watching the MST3K, the Gauntlet. It was just kind of my comfort food while I wasn't feeling well. All the problems that you have, I don't disagree, but it still makes me happy. Mm-hmm. When MST3K is good, MST3K is good. Dorothy Malone showed up in one of the films. It was amazing. Yeah, she showed up in it's actually an interesting film. I don't have the title off the top of my head, but I think we might have to do a couple of those films I saw on MST3K. I'm like, that's actually a pretty decent film that would be worth talking about on this podcast. Anyway, it was delightful to get to see her when I wasn't expecting her. She just showed up and I'm like, oh, Dorothy Malone, it's great. She was like the mom,
Well, I mean, anytime Dorothy Malone...
This was a film from 1979, so, it's 25 years later or 23 years later or whatever, but,
That's the tail end of her career. After that was TV for her mostly. But
yeah, I mean, really, her last film performance was 89. That was in Basic Instinct, which I think we should also do it.
Oh, yeah, we're going to do that. Yeah. Okay, we're down to our top 10s, so we'll alternate, and I'll let you start, Daniel.
Sure. First film I'm going to put on my list is BlacKkKlansman. And again, I'm doing these in alphabetical order. I don't put these in I don't like ranking films. Anybody who's kind of new to this podcast, I just like to kind of say these are 10 films that I really enjoyed that I'd like to talk about, as opposed to these are the 10 best films I saw this year, sort of thing. So BlacKkKlansman, I have deep problems with this film. First of all, they make a big deal in the film saying oh, this is actually a real story. It's not a real story. Even the guy who's kind of dramatizing the film, who wrote the book that the film is based on, he's like, yeah, and all the notes were destroyed by the FBI because they didn't want us to know the secrets or whatever. Yeah, it's fucking bullshit. And even there's stuff in the film that isn't even in the book. All that kind of came out after I saw the film, and I talked about it briefly on this podcast before. Also, the idea of, let's talk about racial justice in the 70s and make the cops the heroes. No, that's not.
Yeah, that's kind of.
There's some deeply problematic shit at the heart of this film, and yet I think there's also some really, really great stuff in this film. This is a film I'd like to cover in detail on this podcast with you at some point. Again, I'm kind of making a list of stuff I want to do this year, and this is one I definitely want to do. I have a lot to say about this film, and I kind of want to save it for when we can actually talk about it.
Well, I figure Daniel, since for half of last year basically was all like, shut up and watch this, Daniel. I think you'll have a lot more prominence this year.
Sure. No, I definitely do want to cover this at some point, mostly because I have a lot of things I'd like to talk about. I think it's definitely worth seeing, though. I feel bad that I didn't get to see Sorry to Bother You, which was the kind of the other big, kind of the black filmmaker who was. I didn't see that this year. Unfortunately, I kind of missed it in theaters, and then I just haven't gotten around to seeing it on demand or whatever. I have every expectation that would have also been on this list if I had gotten the chance.
I've heard nothing but good things about that.
Yeah, that's supposed to be amazing. But BlacKkKlansman, as someone who knows a lot about this world at this point, this film struck me as really powerful in some unexpected ways, despite all of its problems, and I would recommend it. So
nice. First one for me. From 1966 by several directors: Mario Bogolini, Mario Monticelli, Antonio Pietrangeli, and Luciano Salas. I totally butchered those names. The Queens.
Yeah. I love you talking. I love you doing Italian names above all else. Yeah, I want to do a bunch of Italian films just to listen to you mispronounce vowels. I'll
just butcher them all for you. It's good.
No. But the Queens did not make my list. It was very near to making my list. It was.
I love anthology films, and I especially love anthology films where I fall in love with all the women in them. And my God, it's so good.
The greatest silhouette in the film that we saw this year. I think Claudia Cardinal and the Queens. And that was tough competition this year.
It was. We had some silhouettes in this year, yes. But this film did it for me. I fell in love with an Italian pop singer because one of her songs was featured in this film.
Yep. And I hope that ends up in the in this episode.
It will. Actually, we'll go out on that, I think. But I love everything about this film. Even though some of the segments were not as strong as others, that's an anthology. What can you do?
I think the thing for me is that the thing that kept it from being on my top list was just that there was stuff that I just didn't get about it, that didn't transfer. And, that's not even a fault of the film necessarily as much as I feel like it's doing some things that I just don't understand. That were very Italy in the late 60s specific.
Right, right. And I mentioned, I think I mentioned that as well when we reviewed it, and I mentioned it in my Letterboxd review that there's definitely some cultural stuff I wasn't getting, and I've watched it 3 times since then.
Oh, nice!
I love this film. It's actually just this weird, spectacular little time capsule of all these beautiful women just giving their all in these nice little vignettes, and it's weird. It's almost singular. I can't think of any other film quite like it.
I'm glad you loved it. It was literally a rare-less discovery for me. It was just a title that showed up, and I read the synopsis and went, "Let's do this film." I loved it as well. It didn't make my list for kind of reasons of there was other stuff I would rather put on the list, but it's a really, really phenomenal film, and I hope we do more films like it.
Yeah. Okay, your next one.
Sure. Captain Kronos. Which I don't even have much to say about it, except it was really fun and really goofy. Another great silhouette in a film. So we're going to go there.
Thank you, Carolyn Monroe.
For me, it was memorable in a way that a lot of the other films that we did in that genre were, not that they weren't good, but they were less memorable because this one was kind of singular in terms of its tone. It feels a little bit Princess Bridey in terms of kind of approaching that sort of, we know this is for fun, we're not doing this, we're not really taking this all that seriously. It's got a great comedic hanging of a vampire kind of thing. It's got a great kind of buddy comedy kind of action hero duo. It's got a great female lead who has an amazing silhouette, And, it's got a great swordsman fighting vampires. And honestly, I wish there were like 3 of these. I wish this had been a trilogy so we could have enjoyed all of them, because I feel like this was a step in the right direction for kind of late period Hammer, and one of my favorite films from that kind of genre that we covered,
It really did deserve a film series, or at the very least, it needs a revival where someone could do like a Netflix series at this point. Like,
yeah, sure.
Do the fucking Captain Kronos Netflix series, revive it.
Oh, can you imagine like a 13 episode, hour-long Captain Kronos series of, going around and doing like goofy killing of vampires sort of thing? Like, it's totally the sort of thing Netflix should do. And you could take the same tone and just like adapt it over and, do it the same way. It was one of the same way the Queens was just sort of like a fun thing you got to see. Like, this was just super, super fun for me to sit and watch it. I really enjoyed it.
Nice. Next one I'll mention for 2014, Creep from Patrick Bryce.
So Creep 2 made your honorable mention.
Yep.
Creep major. Okay.
Creep is a really disturbing found footage film about a serial killer, and I don't want to spoil it too much. I think it's very engaging the way it's done. It's not quite Blair Witch level for me as far as found footage films goes, but it's close. And I think just the performances, they're very naturalistic, but at the same time, they really do kind of suck you in. And I found myself enjoying it. Like, I found myself believing that the guy who's behind the camera would be entranced and enticed by this creepy motherfucker to film him, which is sort of the premise of it. Like, he's basically hired by this guy to film basically what he says is a goodbye, here's who I was kind of video letter to his son, because he's dying of cancer, he says, basically, kind of thing. It's, spoilers, it turns out not to be that, but it's really, really well done. Even when things get weird, I still believe that the guy behind the camera would stay with this guy and film him, just because you get the sense that the guy behind the camera is kind of really fucking lonely and is looking for some sort of human contact, even though he's trying to do it through the lens of the camera. So there's some deeper things going on there in the film. It's deserving of the sort of reputation it has, which a lot of people kind of say it's kind of like a sort of a modern horror classic in a lot of regards. So, and I kind of agree with that.
I have a sort of an online acquaintance who has said that, the greatest eras for horror are like the 30s, the 70s, and right now.
Is that Sad Marsh Ghost?
It is, yes.
Yeah, I follow him as well on Twitter, and I agree with him.
Yeah.
Go
follow Sad Marsh Ghost.
He is excellent. He is excellent. If you want to follow someone,
he knows his shit.
Yeah, if you want to follow someone on Twitter who knows their horror and talks about it intelligently, that's definitely someone to follow.
Yeah, definitely.
So your next one, sir.
All right. You mentioned earlier, I kind of cut you off, Carnal Knowledge. Mike Nichols, really deep character study of these two characters, going over decades, 3-4 decades worth of their lives. Phenomenal Anne Margaret performance. Not the last Anne Margaret performance on my list, but honestly, I have not gotten a chance to rewatch this film. I know that Jack Graham has kind of mentioned wanting to kind of delve into this a little bit more with me, so hopefully we're going to do that at some time in 2019. This is I hate like you and I do it, and then like Jack and I kind of go off and do another like podcast.
No, well, I like that. I endorse that because you'll definitely get into some stuff that we didn't get into. So
it was. I really feel bad. This is one where kind of watched it and just knew there's like so much shit in this that I'm just not gonna have a chance to really analyze in detail for our podcast. Not the last time I'm going to say that on this list. Really amazing film, really kind of deep character study. Some problematic stuff, which I think is mostly intended by the film as well. Like it's kind of aware of the foibles of its characters.
This film knows how shitty the people in it are.
Yeah, but I mean, it's kind of one of those things where a film made in the kind of the mid 70s, where you're kind of or the early 70s, and you're kind of like, yeah, it kind of gets what's going on, but it's also kind of missing some stuff. I think this film mostly is, like mostly kind of knows how terrible these people are, even from a 2018 perspective.
Yeah.
Which is kind of useful to know. Although it is a, as you kind of intimated, it's a kind of a deeply unpleasant watch at times. This is not kind of a fun, like, oh yeah, put it on before bed, or like a deep movie kind of thing. I can't imagine this being a movie you'd bring a girl over and go like, well, hey, how's it going?
It's listed like, my God, it was promoted as a comedy in some markets, and it's listed as a comedy in some places on the internet. Can you conceive of someone taking like a girl on a date? Let's go see this comedy. It's going to be a romantic comedy.
Carnal knowledge. I can imagine the 80s sex comedy version with like Candice Bergen going like, oh, look at me. I've got 2 boys who want me, And then, you sit down and it's like, it reminds me of there's a Simpsons gag where the boys, they get a fake ID and they go to see Naked Lunch. And they walk out and they're like, there are 2 things wrong with that title. That's kind of how I feel about this brilliant film. Definitely worth checking out. Hopefully, I will get a chance to kind of revisit it and kind of go into it in more detail. But definitely worth your time.
Definitely, yeah, totally.
Some great performances. Probably, I mean, as much as Anne Margaret, phenomenal performance in this film. She's a secondary character in this. I mean, Jack Nicholson, Art Garfunkel, and Anne Margaret, 3 absolutely top-notch performances.
Wow, fucking Art Garfunkel is actually really good in this. Wow, who would know? And even though, true, Anne Margaret's a secondary sort of performer in this, she stands out. Her and Candice Bergen are both, I think, equally powerful in this. It's good stuff.
For me, I kind of grew up with Candice Bergen as Murphy Brown.
Yeah,
I don't know if you kind of grew up with Murphy Brown the way I did. Like I watched it as a kid, and so I kind of know Murphy Brown. I kind of know Candice Bergen like in the 80s and her like 40s, but you see her like here, and it's like, I mean, dear God, like she's gorgeous and she's phenomenal, and she's not doing that character, So
no. Really, really good stuff. Next, we're going to mention from our good friend Jess Franco, Venus and Furs, 1969. I think this, out of all the stuff we've done of Franco, and we've only sort of dipped our toes into Franco.
We've done, I think, 5 Franco films, which means we are less than 5% into our the Franco au revoir,
Yeah, but this is probably his most coherent and complete film. I still say, maybe a personal favorite is like Vampires, Lesbos or something like that, just because it's got Soledad Miranda. I mean, if this film had Soledad Miranda...
Yeah, She Killed in Ecstasy is sort of still my favorite of his films. But Venus and Furs, it's got a whole lot to recommend it. A complete film, as you say, kind of more. I mean, I said this before. I'll kind of repeat it now. I mean, one of the issues with Franco is he made so many fucking films, and he was working on so much of a tiny budget. You think like if he'd had a little bit more money, a little bit more time to kind of craft stuff, and to sort of then maybe if he instead of making 160 films, if he'd made 30 films, then we'd probably have 15 that were really good. But as it is, we made 160. And we have like 5 or 10 that are like, decent. You know what I mean? Yeah. Venus and Furs, definitely one of his best. Didn't make my list, more just out of, it just didn't make my list, but it's a really interesting film and it's really worth checking out.
If he had the money to make this that he had for Mansion of the Living Dead. Because he was given like a shit ton of money to make that, and basically what he did was film his girlfriend fucking a bunch of other women on holiday.
I.e., he made his masterpiece with Mansion of the Living Dead. I very nearly put Mansion of the Living Dead on my list. Honestly, I kind of skipped past Venus and Furs, like, yeah, then Mansion of the Living Dead. Oh, well, maybe. Yeah.
Okay. But I think Venus and Furs is probably his most complete representation of his artistic vision. I think it gets all of his fetishes as well, because it's beautiful women, women abused, women abusing men, women killing men, jazz music. And he gets to sit in with Manfred Mann and play music as well. Damn, he must have had a fucking great time making that film.
Oh,
like,
yeah,
it must have been great for him. But Venus and Furs. There you go, Daniel. Next.
Sure. Deathline.
Ah, nice.
This is what's his name? What's the lead in this? I'm sorry, my brain. I've had too much alcohol.
Sherman.
What's that?
Gary Sherman, director.
No, Gary Sherman, director.
Donald Pleasance.
Pleasance, yes. I apologize to everyone. I've had quite a bit of alcohol today.
Hey, I've been forgetting shit all night. So
yeah. So Donald Pleasance, I love him in the horror stuff. I'm not gonna say anything bad about it. It's great. I really want to see like him as goofy detective guy, in a series of these movies. But also, this has it's got that bit which I love, and it's also got this amazing horror story that I also love. And so it's two great movies that somehow both work together, despite the fact that tonally they should not, but they do, because it's just that good. Go back and listen to our episode. It's phenomenal. It's dark. It's funny. It's humane. It's got some great character work. It's one of the great like horror performances of all time from the man in the subterranean tunnel, the cannibal. Just some amazing stuff.
That's another one of these horror movies that's sadly overlooked too. Like it's just one of those ones that not until the last 10, 15 years has it really sort of come to light as being like a classic. And you're definitely right. Donald Pleasance really kind of sells this film. I mean, not only do you get a really great Donald Pleasance performance where he sort of carries his sort of half of the film, you get that fun little interaction between him and Christopher Lee, like where Christopher Lee just showed up for a day. And it's just this fun little gem for anyone who's this big fan of all these sort of horror actors of that generation. There's just this fun little spot. Like it's only a couple minutes and it's fucking beautiful. And
it's almost like Bond and Monvillain, but like in that kind of, you can see this lifelong animosity that these people have for each other. It's just so well written and so well performed and so well. And again, even aside from the sort of horror movie stuff, if you take all that stuff out of it and they're just doing like a normal kind of like murder mystery or something, it's still a great film. And that's such just a mark of honor for a film of this kind. It's phenomenal.
Yeah. Next one I'll mention is one I just saw in the last little while because I ordered it on DVD and it showed up in the last week or so. This is Breakheart Pass from 1975, directed by Tom Grease. And this is a Charles Bronson Western from the mid-70s that basically has him as a criminal who is escorted by a sheriff played by Ben Johnson, who we've talked about in The Town That Dreaded Sundown. He was the sheriff in that. He's basically escorted him on a train, and there's this murder mystery on the train. People are dying on the train. It's basically a military train that's transferring medicine to cure a outbreak in a fort. And so they're heading towards this fort on the train, and all of a sudden there's all these murders, and there's this extra layer of intrigue and suspense on the sort of plot. It sort of weaves the Western spy movies and mystery as well. All together. And basically, Charles Bronson, of course, he's the hero, so he is part of integral to getting to the bottom of who's killing who and what's going on. And it's a really good action film. And honestly, all I have to say about this is if you're not behind an action film where Charles Bronson fights a guy on the top of the train and does a drop kick on the guy, then I don't know what you're doing with your life, because
I'm on board with that. Yeah,
it's fucking amazing. It's one of the better Charles Bronson films. It's actually one of the better Charles Bronson Jill Ireland team ups, because he would bring her on for almost every movie he did in the 70s when they were married. So it's, you have to take my wife onto this film, otherwise no dice. It's like so. And it's one of the better ones. It's actually one of Jill Ireland's better performances, because I feel like she's kind of weak in several of the movies that they did together, but here she's really good. It's got just a cavalcade of great character actors from the 70s on this. It's just everything's just firing on all cylinders in this film. So good stuff.
Awesome. My next one, Five Guns West. This is my Dorothy Malone film. Again, I was gonna do Written on the Wind, and then I went I figured you were gonna pick it.
Yeah.
Five Guns West. Honestly, if you ask me which one of the Dorothy Malones I would rather rewatch first, it's this one. This is a low-budget Roger Corman Western. She is at the center of this film. She's amazing. As I said in our episode, there's some issues with sort of the plotting and kind of how it ends and everything. Some of the action scenes are leave a little bit to be desired. But I love her at the center of this film. I love her. You're really getting to exert her space, so often, I think in her career, and in pretty much any actress's career at this time, you just kind of get to be the supporting, kind of player.
Right.
But here she's very much at the center. This is made very cheaply in, 2 weeks or whatever, but it's a delightful film. It's really a kind of a lost gem. It's got a great plot. It's got a great tension that's kind of at the center of it, while not being too heavy. It's just, for me, it's just, this is just kind of a cinematic pleasure. And again, 1955. I've said this before. A lot of films from this era, you kind of watch because you feel like it's kind of homework. Like, oh yeah, I definitely want to kind of understand what's going on. This doesn't feel that way at all. This is a really fun watch. It's on YouTube. Please go watch it.
Yeah, I totally agree.
It's one of the great. I mean, it's Dorothy Malone being amazing, and what else do you want to hear?
It's great Corman before Corman got known for doing like the sci-fi horror stuff too. It's really well done. Yeah, totally agree with that. Next one I'll mention, Other Side of the Wind, 2018, Orson Welles. Fucking basically, when we did this, honestly, we were both taking a chance on this one. Is this going to be any good? It's got Orson Welles behind it, but at the same time, it's kind of a film that was not finished with him. It was. I
kind of thought this was going to be a little bit of a mess, but I was interested in talking about it anyway, and I was going to use the excuse. Like I said, we're doing this film as soon as it showed up. This is also on my list, so let's just take the excuse to talk about it.
Okay.
This is my favorite film of the year.
Oh shit! All right.
Yeah. No.
Nice.
Of everything I saw this year, this was probably I'm not going to say the only film, but one of the only films that really set me back and made me like reconsider like how films are made and how films can be made. This really pushed the envelope for me, and it's 40 years old, and that's astonishing at how well made that is.
To see the stuff that he's doing in this film. And
so did F for Fake make your list by the chance?
Yes, it did. Yeah.
Okay.
It's coming up next, actually.
Sure. Okay, fair enough.
But yeah, fucking the stuff he was doing in this, it just solidifies. I see so many people these days saying, "Oh, Orson Welles, he's just that guy who made like one great film back in the day when it was black and white, and he's coasting on his reputation." Fuck that shit. This guy was a brilliant filmmaker. And you see it here. You see this guy was innovating. He was trying new things. He was constantly expanding what he was doing. And he was making new films. And he was trying his best to make new films. The only reason you don't know about this shit is because he didn't get the funding and this stuff didn't get released when it should have been released.
Yeah, no. If Other Side of the Wind had been released in 1976 or whatever, like if he'd been able to finish it, I think he could have had a real career as this avant-garde filmmaker, but I don't think I think you released that. I mean, it would have been roughly contemporaneous with Star Wars. And this is like the tail end of that kind of like 70s independent, or not even independent, but sort of like filmmaker as auteur era. Like we're right at the tail end of that, right at the beginning of the blockbuster era. And everything kind of goes in a completely different way. And so this is the end of that. I mean, I was talking to Jack Graham, who did our F for Fake discussion with us, and I think Wells would have kind of found a home on TV. He would have done some BBC documentaries or something, just make these weird things that he was going to make. But and sorry, I'm feeding into. We get to skip one of mine here in a minute because I'm just talking about it now. But F for Fake. I mean, the whole thing with that is, ultimately, so far ahead of its time. Only now in 2018. Are we seeing people really kind of pushing the envelope? And that's just nobody's on YouTube doing the same like kinds of things that he was doing back then. It's just phenomenal stuff. Again, Other Side of the Wind, it blew me the fuck away. I was really kind of I really was kind of two minds going into it. That okay, this is going to be problematic. It's like pieced together from whatever. It's not really complete, but it's also Orson Welles, so I'm going to expect to love kind of the directing and the editing and kind of get the things that I like from it, but also kind of recognize it's still kind of a broken piece of art. And that's not what this is at all. It's absolutely astonishing. And you could know nothing about how this was made and still appreciate it as a complete, like, brilliant work.
That's the thing. It feels complete. Ostensibly, it was. It was complete. It's just that it wasn't. It didn't get the post production. I mean, it was sitting around. It didn't have the post production, and I mean, sure, there's going to be.
But the post production is so much of the like making of it. You know, you can imagine. And again, we mentioned this. You know, when we did it the first time, you can imagine a really shitty edit of this that you know somebody would have thrown together and put out there. So it's really good that they waited 40 years too. You know, you can imagine like the really shitty version that showed up on VHS after, you know, Orson Welles died in 1986. It would be remembered as just like, oh, this little piece of shit that Orson Welles was making. And then, you know, like 30 years later, they go back to the negatives and release the Criterion disc or something like that. It's kind of admirable that they didn't do that, that Oya Kodar, you know, sat on it and said, no, we're not fucking doing that. We're going to do this properly. We're not going to do it at all.
No, good on that woman, man. She she saved it. She really did. Good
for you, Oya Kodar. Yeah.
To look at this and to look at, we might as well just talk about F for Fake as well, because that's my next one on this list. So
sure, go ahead.
You look at F for Fake, and there's a lot of what he was doing in Other Side of the Wind that sort of comes out in F for Fake, just as far as his technique. And people, and you know, F for Fake was out there. People knew about F for Fake, and it was kind of dismissed and kind of. Initially, it was totally dismissed and not critically well received, and it was just kind of like a curio that, you know, people picked up afterwards. If Other Side of the Wind was released before F for Fake, honestly, I kind of question, would F for Fake have even existed if Other Side of the Wind?
F for Fake was sort of. I feel like they're kind of being made around the same time because the photography on Other Side of the Wind was 70 to 75 or whatever.
Okay, yeah.
And F for Fake was 73. But it was kind of made out of like mostly pre-existing, and then kind of reshot, but it was kind of released in 73, 74. So I kind of imagine them as kind of one process, that this is Orson Welles kind of discovering this new way of making films. And to me, now that I've seen Other Side of the Wind, like I saw F for Fake, you know, 20 years ago or whatever, you know, or at least 10 years ago. And it was just this, you know, it blew me away when I saw it back then. And then seeing Other Side of the Wind and realized, like, no, this wasn't kind of a one-off. This was where he was going creatively. And that's the real tragedy for me of Welles, is like, you know, like people think, oh yeah, he's Citizen Kane and he made, you know, a few other films, and like Touch of Evil is great, and you know, he's got some, you know, but people think of it as like black and white and noir. It's like, no, he was a vital filmmaker up until his very last times that he was making films, and it's just a shame that he couldn't get money for it. I mean, it's these films are so brilliant, you know.
It's just so fucking satisfying to see how good The Other Side of the Wind is. Like, it's fucking, it's not a flop, it's not a piece of shit, it's actually fucking brilliant. And it's just like, okay, Orson Welles, you made it, you did it. Like, you did not. You're not the failure everybody fucking tries to say you are these days. Like, you're not the fucking guy who couldn't finish a film. You're just the guy who, as you know, in F for Fake, it's like, I'm going to take the time to actually get the film fucking finished. I'm not going to be you know, constrained by timelines and shit. Like, you know, so it's good. It's fucking great.
Well, in a modern, like, you know, Kubrick took a year to edit his films. You know? And I mean, as brilliant as Kubrick is, I mean, Kubrick has some talent, right? You know, like, you know,
that kid's going someplace.
That kid's got something in his brain. Like, he's doing some good stuff, you know. But like, certainly, I mean, look, no offense to Kubrick in saying, like, the complexity of the post-production is not nearly what we see in F for Fake or Other Side of the Wind. These are an order of magnitude more complex. Even today with digital editing, this is horrendously complicated. Re-edit. I mean, you know, you imagine the number of hours it took in an editing bay to like figure this out.
All the cuts he does in Other Side of the Wind, I can't even fucking begin to think his thought process, how he devises, because he had it in mind, like this is what these cuts are going to be, and you look at all the fucking fast cuts, like just in the first half hour of that film, the amount of cuts.
He had to know this footage intimately. He had to watch it and just have it in his head and know exactly, what was there, and like he was editing in his head while he was shooting it, I'm sure. And
argument aside,
take Citizen Kane away and take Citizen Kane and Touch of Evil, just throw them in the garbage, and still Orson Welles.
That guy was fucking cinema. Like he lived and breathed it. Like
absolutely.
How many more do you have on your list? Let's just.
I have. So if we take Other Side of the Wind off, I have 1, 2, 3, 4.
So you have 4. I have 4. Okay, that's good.
Okay,
that's good.
No, that was kind of why I said let's just go ahead and do F for Fake, and so that way we're. And I'll let you. I mean, Other Side. I do them in alphabetical order, so it's obvious when Other Side of the Wind shows.
Okay, I'll let you go
again. Other Side of the
again.
Wind was on my list, so let's just go ahead and do Ganja and Hess.
Ah, nice.
Yeah, no, this. I feel really bad about our discussion of this, our podcast about this, just because I kind of watched it late and was like, "Holy shit! I don't know what the fuck is going on." This was definitely, we could talk about a lot of films on this podcast, and this was kind of one of those like, yeah, 2 white guys should not be talking about this.
I think as 2 white guys, we did pretty admirably.
I think we did pretty well, but I wish I had like. There's always a challenge when doing these is like I like to kind of keep the film fresh in my head for the podcast. I find that it just kind of works for, to kind of keep it. But also I like to have a little bit of kind of knowledge ahead of time and kind of have it process. And this was one where I'm like, oh, yeah, I'll watch the film. It's like, yeah, it's kind of a vampire art film, but it's going to be fairly straightforward. And I really wish I'd given this an extra day and watched it twice before we recorded on it. This is an amazing film, amazing performances. I still don't know quite what the fuck is going on in some of this, but I love it because of that. It's really got some. It's doing that kind of. I don't want to say avant-garde or abstract, but it's really got some really interesting stuff going on. A brilliant film, and please go check it out.
It's really not only is just a sort of a really interesting horror film. It's a really singular art film from the 1970s. Yeah. Like it really is.
I mean, it's not. I mean, I would almost not even class it as a horror film. It is. And I'm not trying to denigrate horror as a genre. I'm just trying to say it's doing something else than like that.
Although I think on. Again, this is a white guy talking about black culture, but culturally, I think it kind of does work as a horror film because it does speak.
It does work as that, and it does speak to that kind of thing. But I think also, it again, complicated. It's even complicated to talk about how great this film is for 2 white guys, because suddenly I say well, to call it a horror film is to ghettoize it, and then that by itself is to kind of use a racialized language, and kind of a classist language to it,
And in my opinion, the horror has nothing to do with the vampirism. The horror is the the societal racial horror that's kind of touched on in that, right?
Absolutely, huge complicated film that's got a lot of layers to it. Please go check it out.
There's a Blu-ray version that just came out in the last year or so, and just fucking do it. Grab it up.
Yeah.
Next, we're going to mention, this is one I just watched in the last week or so. This is another one of my Christmas purchases, actually. It was like, I'm going to have myself a Merry Christmas. So I pre-ordered a bunch of shit a few weeks earlier. This is Live Like a Cop, Die Like a Man from 1976, directed by Ruggero Deodato, who is best known for directing Cannibal Holocaust. But this is his Polizioteschi dip into that genre. This has, I just totally blanked on his name, but the lead from Let Sleeping Corpses Lie, that guy. Ray Lovelock. Sure. Ray Lovelock. Sure. There we go. And some other guy that I've never seen in anything else. It's almost like they're replacements for Franco Nero and Fabio Testi. It almost feels like at 1976, it's like we've got to get the new Franco Nero and the new Fabio Testi ready for Italian cinema going into the 80s. And These two are the most just psychopathic, amoral cops you can think of. Like, they're part of this elite police squad in Rome who don't care about rules, don't care about police procedure. They outright do preemptive strikes on criminals. It's like, they're going to do a bank job. So what we're going to do is we're going to show up before they do the bank job, and we're just going to kill them all with silenced pistols. That's what they do. But this is, from this genre, this is one of the most entertaining, fucking action-packed Poliziotteschi's I've ever seen.
We should definitely do some more Poliziotteschi's this year.
We're I think we're going to do this one because it's over the top. It's gory because it's Ruggero Deodato, because he's basically like Fulci, who also dipped into this genre at one point. He's got his signature sort of gore spots and stuff like that. Like, the opening scene has a woman, her purse is snatched by a motorcycle thief, but her purse is attached to her wrist by a chain. So they try to pull the purse away, and she gets caught with the chain, and she's pulled and dragged down the street by the motorcycle. And in like the opening few minutes, her head is smashed into like a fucking lamppost. And the motorcycle thief has to get off the motorcycle, detach her fucking wrist from the purse, and then like the two thieves kick the shit out of her. And they get on the motorcycle and drive away. And then our two titular quote-unquote heroes, because they're not really heroes because they're psychopaths themselves, chase them down. And there's this really amazing chase that was not sanctioned by anyone in authority. Like, it was just filmed in Rome that day. It's like, we're just doing it. And they have a motorcycle crash. So one of the bad guys on the motorcycle, he gets disemboweled by like the pedal on the motorcycle or whatever. The other guy gets thrown clear and is injured, and one of the cops just goes up to him and sort of pats him on the face like, "Hey, how you doing?" And then breaks his neck, like just snaps his neck. It's like, oh, he must have died in the accident. He broke his neck in the accident. Like, it's that kind of movie. Like, these cops are dirty as fuck, but at the same time, the movie sort of gets you behind them, and it's like, yeah, I'm gonna cheer for him, maybe.
Yeah, we should definitely do this. Sounds good.
Yeah, it's an amazing exercise in that sort of genre, and I thought it was really good. So there we go.
Awesome. My next one, another 2018 film, Ocean's 8. This was the Sandra Bullock, Cate Blanchett kind of sequel, reboot, whatever, to the Ocean's 11 franchise.
Isn't Matt Damon in that one?
No.
I thought he had a cameo or something.
There's the one character who gets who has a cameo, and I don't have his name in front of me, and I apologize. He's the Chinese acrobat from Ocean's 11. He comes back, and honestly, it's a surprise. It's like it's kind of a bit of a, you're not supposed to know that kind of going in. It's sort of one of those kind of twists, like, oh, it turns out that this guy, like, they hired him at the end and, did some stuff. But so he does show up kind of at the end. I kind of love these kind of goofy heist movies. I actually rewatched a little bit of Ocean's 11 while we've been gone, because we did like 2 episodes in 2 days, and I've been kind of gone for 2 or 3 weeks. I was sitting in a hotel room in Florida because, I went on vacation, and I was sitting at night, and I was drinking a little bit of Jack Daniels, and Ocean's 11 was on, so I watched a little bit of Ocean's 11, which is still a film I like. I actually never saw Ocean's 12 or Ocean's 13. I kind of got to... Yeah, I saw Ocean's 11. I really liked that. I'm done. I don't need to see.
Yeah, you don't need to see the other ones, but they're fine.
But I saw Ocean's 8, and it's very much. I mean, if anything, I think it's actually better than Ocean's 11. Especially if you don't necessarily like compare them and just sort of like treat it as kind of its own thing. I love Sandra Bullock in it. There's like huge lesbian big dick energy. It's great. There's so much implied lesbianism in this film. It's amazing. It has a lot of the same kind of pleasures of the Ocean's 11 movie. Like it's got a lot of the, the kind of the clever heist stuff. It's got a lot of the, there's tension, but not really in kind of a ratcheting up kind of a real threat, and more just kind of like, oh, these people are clever, they're going to get through the end, it's going to be fine. Also a lot of amazing sexiness and great stuff. I don't know, it's just such a fun little movie. I really enjoyed it. It's directed by Gary Ross, who sort of one of those, he wrote Big and he wrote Dave back in the day, wrote and directed Pleasantville, and then he did like the Hunger Games, or I think 1 or 2 of the Hunger Games movies. Doing Ocean's 8, but it's well directed, it's stylish, totally fun. I really enjoyed it. I will definitely want to rewatch this at some point. Like if this shows up on like TBS or whatever, kind of late night TV, like I will sit and watch this and be perfectly happy with it. It's that kind of movie, and so it goes on my list. It's great.
Nice. Next one I'm going to mention is Truck Turner from 1974 from Jonathan Kaplan. This is basically Isaac Hayes, basically his blaxploitation starring vehicle, and he's fucking great in it. Oh my God, he's so good in it. This is one of the best blaxploitation movies I've ever seen. It's just
with a name like Truck Turner, how can it be bad?
It's wall-to-wall action. It plays off Isaac Hayes' just coolness. He's just a really cool dude, and it works. And It is one of these movies, some of the movies that sort of highlighted Fred Williamson as like just being the biggest badass in the world. This one makes Isaac Hayes look like the coolest badass motherfucker you're ever going to see in a film. It's got Yaphet Kotto in it as the bad guy. It's just got these insane...
what was his fate? 75?
74, yeah.
Wow, Yaphet Kotto would have been like 23 or something?
Something like that.
Yeah.
And it's got this insane shootout in the hospital, which is just fucking crazy. It's got great action scenes. It's got an Isaac Hayes soundtrack in it, of course, which is generally good, except for when Isaac Hayes is singing, which I just my personal preference. I don't think Isaac Hayes is ever that great as a vocalist, but his soundtrack music is still really good. And yeah, like if you're looking for an introduction to blaxploitation and you want to be like super entertained, this shit is good. Like, this is like top of the line fucking blaxploitation filmmaking. It's so good.
We should definitely do this. This sounds like a ton of fun. I'm down for this, definitely.
Right on. Your next one.
Another, I saw this week. This is one that the one superhero movie I put on my list this year, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
I saw this week. It didn't quite make my honorable mentions, but it's like right up there.
I was amazed at how good this film was.
Yeah,
and
it's crazy.
My expectations were high on this. Now, you didn't see this on a big screen, I assume.
No, I didn't. That's why I'm reserving like putting it on the list, because I saw it in a really shitty film.
I saw this on a big screen, and dear fucking God, some of the sequences in this film are, I hate to like put it on that like level of, well, you have to see it on a big screen or else you kind of don't get it. But yeah. Some of this stuff, I mean, if you've seen the film, you don't really get how enveloping some of the stuff is unless you see it on a big screen.
I got that impression, yeah.
And that said, what I love about this, I mean, and I would totally do this film as a discussion at some point.
We should do it.
You know, I've seen people say greatest superhero movie of all time. I'm not 100% on board with that, but I'm like 90% on board with that.
It's up there.
You know, it may very well be the greatest superhero movie of all time. It is able to kind of do the comic book thing of kind of having multiple universes. Mm-hmm. It tells the story. It relies on the fact that we've now seen Spider-Man rebooted with this film 4 times. Although he's rebooted 6 times in this film, so
it goes right back to the Tobey Maguire stuff. It notices that stuff, like it mentions it. So
yeah. Well, and the God, I don't want to give too much away, honestly, in terms of the film. I mean, I feel like I've already maybe given a little bit too much away, but even beyond all the kind of multiverse stuff, all the sort of like great action stuff, and all the, like it's got a real core character. I mean, Miles Morales, the relationship between his father and his uncle, the way that he feels kind of torn between like a lot of different worlds, even before you get to the multiverse stuff, the relationship he has with a certain female character. Yeah. It's so well written, it's so well performed, it's so good, and it's so honest and authentic. Also, just the visuals. I mean, again, just the way the city looks, like the way New York, the way Brooklyn looks in this film. I have been to Brooklyn brief for a couple of days, like 10 years ago. This film just gets it completely. The experience of being in a big city. This film breathes so well. It is phenomenal. Literally, I got to the end of this film and I just turned to my wife because we saw it together and just went, "We need to see this again." She and I will see this again before it leaves theaters. It is absolutely astonishing. one of the best films I've seen this year. I mean, had it not been for Other Side of the Wind, I might have actually put this as best film I saw this year.
I could see that. I have to see this in like a good version. Like I just saw it in a shitty like cam recorded version on Putlocker.
You have not actually seen this film. I promise you.
Yeah. But even there, I got the impression that, like, yeah, this is great. I've seen that animation style done in a more primitive form on TV. Like, there was a Batman series a couple years ago that sort of used this sort of same 3D sort of process. Like, I don't know if it's the exact same process, but it looked similar to this. But it's so much more advanced here. Like, at times, you're just lost in it, and it looks like live action. Like, it looks that good.
Well, it's not even that it looks... I'm not disagreeing with you. It's not even that it looks live action as much as it looks like animation, but has sort of it looks like you're peering into another universe.
It looks like you're watching a motion comic book is what
exactly. It looks like you're peering into a world that looks like this, but has the sort of depth of reality that the real world has. And that's kind of because again, I put The Incredibles 2 as most disappointing film I saw this year. Once I saw this, it just kind of solidifies how disappointing that is. You look at that, and The Incredibles 2 is a film that it goes by the numbers, right? It just sort of says, okay, we've got to do this. We've got to have an adorable baby. We've got to have you seen The Incredibles 2?
No.
Okay. You got to have an adorable baby. We're doing superheroics. We've got like action scenes and everything. It's by the numbers. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just kind of doing its thing. This is a film that lives and breathes. It has characters. It has life. It has stakes. It has humor. It's funny. Like, it's deeply funny at times. And yet it's exploring some of the really deep character drama. And there's stuff in this film that's just heartbreaking. And it just turns on a dime. Amazing voice performances, amazing animation. I fucking love this movie.
I got probably more laughs out of this film than anything I saw this year.
Yep.
And I legit teared up in certain scenes in this. Like it affected me that much. It was that well done. So there you go. And I can't wait to watch it again in a better form. Let's put it that way.
And I was looking at the Wikipedia page. Even before the film was released, like, this has like a 97% on like Rotten Tomatoes or whatever, which nothing ever gets that high, right? You know, like, we're definitely going to get another film in this series, but we're also going to get some like sideline movies with some of the like secondary characters. Like, we're going to get Spider-Woman, you know. Again, I don't want to give too much away for people who haven't seen it, but we are going to get some sideline stuff, and I'm hoping we get a whole like universe of films set.
Oh, I'm pretty sure that's going to happen. Some sideline stuff. Let's be fucking real. There's going to be TV series and movies out of this.
Yeah. Well, I hope we don't get so much that it turns into shit. That's kind of the other
side. It might, but I mean, just alone, like, I want to see that fucking Nicholas Cage Spider-Man in a movie. Like,
no.
I want that shit. Holy fuck. And I love how all the different Spider persons in this film, they all have their different visual style, and yet they still integrate it all into this one universe, and it all works.
It's
you get Spider-Ham in this fucking film.
It's astonishing. It's literally, it's just beyond anything that you could imagine.
It might be the best thing Marvel's done in like 10 years.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to do a podcast about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I think that, this is not part of the MCU, although they may very well connect it in at some point. I would not be surprised at all if they do. I love a bunch of the stuff in the MCU. This very easily is the best thing.
Yeah.
Like, better than anything in the MCU. And I actually really enjoy the MCU. So, there we go.
There we go, yeah. Next we're going to mention...
so you have, one more or two more?
I got two more.
Okay. I have one more after this.
Okay. So next we're going to mention 2018 from Joel and Ethan Coen, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs.
Oh, God. I did not get a chance to watch this year.
Oh, my God.
It's literally been on my list. I've been sick enough that I don't want to, hit play on it. So I've been, rewatching The Office and watching Mr. Says 2000 instead. This is on my I need to watch this in 2019 list.
I've watched this 4 times now. Every time I've watched it, I loved it more. First time I watched it, I wasn't too sure because some of the segments I was like, okay, it's a little iffy because it's basically an anthology. It was supposed to be a TV series, but it was turned into a film. So they brought 6 episodes of that series and shortened them down into film size. Some of them are a little bit longer. Some of them are super short. It's fucking amazing. It's basically like a taster's platter of the Coen brothers in a way. Although it's all, the Coen brothers have been doing a lot of Western stuff recently, and I think they've kind of nailed that genre really well. Yeah.
I mean, True Grit, their version of True Grit is a fucking masterpiece.
It is. It's brilliant. And I mean, No Country for Old Men is essentially a Western.
Which I have. There are people on my Twitter feed who disparage that film. No Country for Old Men.
They're dummies.
We'll talk about it in terms of its politics and in terms of kind of discussing the deeper philosophical questions. They are wrong. I have a very sophisticated argument in that this film is actually representing the best kind of anti-fascism, which, if you and I ever discuss the film, we will get into, I promise.
Well, we should probably think about discussing it this new year then. Yeah. This is fucking brilliant. It captures all the thematic and tonally sort of resonant themes that the Coen brothers have touched on in their entire careers. It's kind of like a best of the Coen brothers in a way. Although it's all distilled through a Western. It is, my God, the performances in this, the casts in this, the opening one, the Ballad of Buster Scruggs, the titular Ballad of Buster Scruggs is the opening segment in this. It is like a Bugs Bunny cartoon in a way, but at the same time, it's like the deep, dark side of the singing cowboy trope of early Western mythology in film. And at the same time, it mirrors that with Quentin Tarantino Hateful Eight violence, or actually more like Django Unchained violence. And it's fucking brilliant. Like, it's one of the best things I've seen on film in a long time. And then there's this segment with fucking Tom Waits. Tom Waits deserves a fucking Oscar nod for this. It is a brilliant performance. He was made to have this role for him. Like, he was born for this as a old gold mining prospector who goes into this valley digging for gold, and everything on that segment is note perfect. There's this great fucking segment at the end where there's all these 5 characters in a stagecoach going to a nebulous destination where the 3 of the characters realize that 2 of the other characters are not quite what they seem. And everything in this film, every segment is a meditation on death of some sort in the Old West. Like, it's kind of a play on that. It's just full of surprises. It's full of fucking delights. Some of these segments are super fucking dark. There's a segment with Liam Neeson in this that is just, oh my God, really? You went that fucking dark? Like, the Coen brothers, and they just do it effortlessly. Fuck these 2 guys. They're making movies so well, so effortlessly. Like, they just seem like they just, off the top of their heads, they do this shit. And it's fucking brilliant.
But their process is one of them writes the other into a corner. So they write into a corner, and then the other one, then they hand it to the other one, and then the other one has to figure out the way out of it. And the reason they do it that way is, if I write into a corner and then I give it to Ethan or whatever, and then Ethan has to figure out how to get out of it, no fucker in the seat is going to figure it out in 30 seconds before it happens. And it's their process. Where did I learn that? Which Lie Did I Tell by William Goldman, which is something you should all read.
All I gotta say is that this film validates the Netflix movie. It really does. Like, people shit on the quality of a lot of Netflix stuff. This is fucking great.
I feel like we should talk about the Netflix model at some point in a place that isn't this. But, for a long time, or at least for a while, 5 years ago, even when you and I first started doing this podcast, I had a lot of nice things to say about Netflix because they just had licenses for everything, because streaming rights were super cheap. And then everybody wants to kind of own their stuff and kind of, sell it in their own little markets.
Right.
And so Netflix has switched to doing their own content, and then they, just whatever else they can kind of get for whatever. But it's not like one-stop shopping anymore the way it was, 5 years ago or 7 years ago or whatever. That's unfortunate, but they've mostly managed to actually make it like, yeah, it's worth my, $9.99 a month or whatever I'm paying for Netflix to have the stuff. They're doing a pretty good job, better than a lot of the other services. Like, I do pay for Amazon Prime. That's mostly for delivery of cheap delivery of stuff, and for they do have a kind of a big library of cheap movies. But
they have a big library of mostly crappy VHS burns of movies.
Which, for this podcast actually kind of works for me.
Kind of works, yeah.
If I wasn't doing this podcast, I might consider not paying that. But also, yeah, it's fine,
What's your next one, sir?
Oh, yeah, I have one more. You mentioned it already. It was on your honorable mention. The Swinger. And Margaret.
God, her bum in those fucking...
I mean, the only thing I'm gonna say is like that dance that she does.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not gonna force you to put like whatever music you want in this, but I think the song that she's dancing to and that sequence where she's doing the dance with the book, that may be my single greatest.
Yeah, and Margaret's super fucking hot. The Swinger is great.
The Swinger is great. That dance sequence of her walking in, and then I said in our review of that it's like she's living in a musical.
Mm-hmm.
And I have watched that little 3-minute sequence probably 24 times. It's gorgeous filmmaking. I mean, beyond just Anne Margaret in 1966. Looks like Anne Margaret in 1966, which is not an unpleasant thing to enjoy.
It's not too hard. Yeah,
it's certainly not like I'm not saying we shouldn't enjoy it for that, but just in terms of the filmmaking, in terms of the choreography and the dancing and the filmmaking, and I admire that sequence as much as any sequence I've watched in any film that I've seen this year. It's phenomenal. I know it didn't make your your top 10. I fucking love this movie. I feel like it's got some problematic shit in it, but man, this was a lot of fun for me. And this was my favorite bit of Anne Margaret this year. I mean, we watched a bit of. We also watched Viva Las Vegas, and for me, this was the good version of Viva Las Vegas, because you don't have to watch Elvis kind of be wooden and stupid.
Yeah, no, I admire that sequence. I've admired stills of that sequence several dozen times as well. So I'll go to my last film on my list here. Sure. And this is Mandy from 2018 by Panos Cosmatos, who did Beyond the Black Rainbow.
Many nice things about this. Yeah,
I love this film so fucking much. It is just, I know some people, there's been some dissenters out there saying, oh, it's too slow. It takes too long to come together. Fuck you. The whole point is that it's a fucking visual delight and it's emotional. It builds. The performances are great. Nicholas Cage here, he's not necessarily reined in so much as he's understood by the director who's directing him and knows how to use him. The quote-unquote Cage rage sequences in this are the best ever that he's done, as far as I'm concerned, because they have emotional weight to them. There's this sequence where he's, after his love of his life, Mandy, is killed in front of him. He goes into a bathroom and drinks a bottle of fucking vodka and then goes through 3 or 4 stages of grief. And I find it fucking riveting and believable. I love how the camera looks at him while he's doing this, because at a point, the camera is almost scared of him. It draws back from him, almost like it's not sure if he's going to fucking strike the camera like a fucking snake. It's that fucking good. Just the way that Cosmatos sort of intuits what Cage is going to do and how he's going to do it. It feels so natural and fucking organic the way he does it. And then the rest,
Nicholas Cage gets a lot of stick for being kind of a ham, and he does a lot of shitty movies.
Right.
But I have never been on the Nicholas Cage is a bad actor train. I think that's a really simplistic take. I think he's a broad actor, but then so is fucking Orson Welles. And we've already we talked about him as a director, but he's broad. He does the thing that he does. He kind of goes into crazy places, but being willing to go into those places is also kind of where you get great performances. He just needs a great director, and it sounds like from everything that I've heard about this film, it's one of those one of my favorite kind of. Sorry, not to kind of interrupt you talking about the film. But one of my favorite movies from again the last 20 years, I guess now, was Matchstick Men. One of my great Nicolas Cage performances. Yeah, it's like a crazy Nick Cage performance, but it's built into this movie that makes it make sense, you know. And it sounds like Mandy is kind of the same kind of thing. Like it's, you let him kind of do the thing he's doing, but also it's framed or it's built into this kind of, world that justifies it,
Mandy herself, the way her character seems to, even after she dies, inhabits the entire world of the film. She's an artist. The art she does is very much informed by sort of the Tor fantasy novels from the early 80s, late 70s kind of thing. Her visual style starts, even after she dies, it's almost like she haunts this film in a way, where her visual style bleeds into basically into the surroundings of the film. And then it becomes like Nicolas Cage going to hell, basically, and taking revenge on all these people who wronged him and killed her. I mean, you could argue, okay, there's some fridging here because Mandy gets killed, and then it's like Nicolas Cage is avenging her. That's what sets him off, kind of thing.
Sure, yeah.
But I mean, it's so minimal, and the minimalist performances by Cage and the actress who does Mandy before Cage just goes off the fucking rails. It's so well done because you get what these characters are without them even saying anything. Like, you get, there's this through line of past trauma that inhabited both of their lives, and they came together and found each other, and they were like soulmates, basically. Like, they completed each other. And then once she's taken away from Cage, his life is destroyed. There's no redemption for him or anything like that. It's just, he just needs to avenge her death, and then after that, his life is done. Like, it's all over for him. And you get that emotionally from the performance, and you get that sort of the undercurrent to this phantasmagoric gore fest that happens in this film, which is as crazy as shit. And Nicolas Cage just chopping in the motherfuckers with chainsaws and fucking axes and shit, and all this blood and craziness, but it's all still grounded in Cosmatos's visual style and everything. And like, it's everything that Beyond the Black Rainbow should have been, maybe.
Yeah,
at the end.
I mean, Beyond the Black Rainbow was our second review. I think it was an episode, and that's a really interesting film, but it's also kind of a stylish, a little bit of a swing and a miss. I think
it's kind of a Kubrick pastiche that doesn't quite connect, I guess, is the best way to say it. But this one, it feels like if Cosmatos never does anything else again, this is like the movie that, okay, he's legit. That's all I really have to say about it, except for flat out reviewing it. So yeah,
legit. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
so
are we done? We've been doing this for 2.5 hours almost. So
almost. Yeah. So I guess we're done. So Daniel, apparently you're still programming this podcast for
I'll program it as long as you want me to. I'm happy to keep torturing you with great movies. Or movies, depending. So here's where we go. We're doing Kurosawa next week.
Nice.
Stray Dog. Or Seven Samurai? It's kind of the question. Stray Dog is going to be a little bit more of a straightforward, watch a movie, enjoy it, kind of a crime film kind of thing. Seven Samurai, better film, but is much more complicated prep work for, I think, both of us. So I'm going to kind of leave it up to you. What do you want to do?
I'd say we'll play it safe for now and maybe do Stray Dog. I think that's a good idea.
It's a great film. I love the film. I've watched this with the sort of not director's commentary, but the sort of the Criterion commentary from which was many years ago. But I have a lot of thoughts about this film. It's going to be a great way to start the year. Let's just put it that way. So next week, Stray Dog. And so my plan is for the next 4 weeks is to do 4 great directors that we've never done before on this podcast. That's kind of the plan. So we're going to start with Kurosawa, and most of them are not American.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, no, good stuff. I just want to briefly say thank you to everybody who has been listening for the past year, 2018. We've definitely picked up some new listeners, and it's been very much appreciated.
I really hate everyone who has listened in 2018. I think anyone who's listened to any episode in 2018 should go fuck themselves. That's kind of my strategy with this.
But
no, of course that's not true. I do appreciate everyone who's listening. And especially if you tweeted us or like say nasty things about me on this podcast and want me to leave, I really appreciate all those people. So it's great.
But no, it's been great. We've had a lot of good listener interaction this year, more than any other year. We've had more sort of guests this year than any other year as well.
Yep,
which has been good. Yeah, we kind of just look forward to 2019 being even better. I think we got some cool stuff to jump into, and I look forward to it. So, Daniel, where can people find you on the interwebs?
You can find me on Twitter at Daniel Lee Harper. You can find a podcast that I do with some British friends of mine, or UK friends of mine, I should say. I don't want to, ruffle any feathers. Wrong with Authority. It's a podcast about movies, about history, and the history they're about, and also whatever else we decide to do on that feed, because we can't ever actually just do a podcast that's about a thing. We've always got random other things going in, but you can find that at wrongwithauthority.blogspot.com. Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff there. I've got some stuff I need to edit and get that out there that I think people are gonna like. But there's also great stuff already out there. God, I'm done. It's over. my brain is done trying to word at this point. So
yeah, same here. But you can find us at tmbdos.podbean.com. You can find all the requisite links there for Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Facebook group. Join the Facebook group. They Must Be Destroyed on site on Facebook. Best place to get in touch with us, find out what's going on, suggest films for us, all that good shit. And yeah, 2019 coming up, bitches. So look forward to that, and we'll see you this year, basically.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Con me tu puoi fumare la tua pipa quando vuoi, perché mi piaci molto di più e sei così romantico. Fumo blu, una nuvola hai dentro tu, e poi se un uomo sa del fumo, ma sì, è veramente un uomo, e io tolererò finché vorrai, proprio perché sei così. Un uomo quando sa di fumo, un uomo quando sa di fumo, e un bacio vale 10 dato da te. Lo so, non sei un divo né un artista né l'eroe del West, ma quando fumi c'è in te un che irresistibile. Fumo blu, una nuvola hai dentro tu, e poi se un uomo sa di fumo, ma sì, è veramente un uomo, e io t'amerò finché vorrai, proprio perché sei così. Un uomo quando sa di fumo, un uomo quando sa di fumo, e un bacio vale 10 dato da te.
You've been listening to They Must Be Destroyed on Sight. For other episodes, our Apple Podcast, YouTube, and Facebook group links, as well as podcasts and websites of similar interest, please visit us at tmbdos.podbean.com. Thank you. Drive through.